Hello again. In the last tutorial, we created this groom from scratch using Ornatrix application, which is available for beta testing right now. And you can use the link down below to apply. So I promised in the last tutorial that in the next one or in this one, we're going to explore this groom panel over here, what it does, and basically see how we can convert this groom that we have here, that a grooming artist would have created using many operators and parameters and tools, into a reusable groom asset that can just have a few parameters that the user can adjust to completely change the look and feel of the groom. So actually, this groom panel over here is what contains these parameters, the ones that you want to expose to the end user, to the artist. And by default, it's empty. It has nothing. We have this edit button here. If you press it, you go into this special mode where you can add parameters, and these are the parameters which we don't have any at the moment. And to add this, you can do a number of ways. First, you can press auto generate. And what it will do basically is it will expose every single parameter of every single operator which comprises your groom into this list here. And this is fine. So let's see what happens if you press accept. You see we have a groom with just all of the operators and all of the different parameters, but this defeats the purpose. Right. So what I can do is I'm just going to undo the creation of these parameters, go back to edit, and next to auto generate, we have this button here, which allows us to export just specific parameters. So for example, if we want to control the length of the hair, I can just type length here, and inside the list, I will find my length operator. And in the length operator, we will find the value, length value here, right? So I'll click it. Currently, it's 1, right? So we want to allow the user to move it between 0 and 2, for example. And again, I'm going to press accept. And now if we drag this value, the hair becomes shorter or longer. I just need to go to see the final result. I'll switch to the shaded view for now, just for a bit faster refresh. So you can see that as I drag it below 1, it makes the hair shorter, above 1 makes longer. So this is something really useful to have for any groom, to allow to change the length. I'm just going to right click to reset to default. I'm going to press edit, and let's add one more parameter. So in this case, we're going to add, instead of the length, we'll add frizz, right? So how much frizz we want to have. I'll just type frizz to find the frizz operator. And in here, we will go and see this amount value. We'll add this parameter. Actually, we forgot to rename the parameters, right? We don't want it to be named the value. So the previous length parameter, I'm just going to keep it as length. And here, the frizz value, maybe we can call it frizz size, right? And then I'm going to do the same thing again for frizz, but this time instead of selecting the value of the frizz, let's change the scale. And this one we'll just call frizziness, and so on, right? So let's just do one more for curl, right? Curl. We want to maybe change the magnitude of the curl, and this one will be, again, curl size. While we're still here, let's also add curl phase, right? So this we're just going to call curliness. So we have exposed these parameters over here. If I press accept, you see that we have them as a limited amount of parameters. And I can change the frizz, right? I can change the frizziness. And you see how it becomes a lot more intuitive now that we have just few parameters limiting the possibilities of what an artist could do to a groom. But at the same time, it removes all of these myriad parameters that been there before and replaces them with just a few adjustable values. Okay, so you can see what the idea is, right? I can right click to reset to default. And then if I press edit, one more thing that I want to show is that all of these parameters for more technically minded people, it's just a Python script. So if I press this edit script button over here, it's going to open a file that is a text file in a text editor. And inside this file, you will have the definition of these parameters that we have defined as a Python collection variable called parameters. And basically, you can edit this by hand, right? You can copy paste or do whatever you want, and then use this update from script button to update these parameters from the changes you made here. And just again, to quickly explain the purpose of this is one of these lines is a separate parameter. You first give it a name, you specify its type, and then you specify a lambda function that's designed to take a graph manager interface and the current value that was specified by user and do whatever you want to the whole groom graph, not just the specific operator. But in this case, you can see that we're setting a value of an operator called length, of the parameter called length.value to value. Right. And then we have the three, like this is the minimum, maximum, and the default values, 3 values. So yeah, this is all I'm going to say about this for now, just not to get too dragged into this whole Python side. So again, I press accept. So let's go back to the groom operator view. And this is great for the current groom, right? This whole scene, now you don't have to use operator stack, you can control from here. But it's more useful because now if I go and export this groom as a Graft Groom, and I'm going to export it not into Ornatrix app directory, right? But if you also have another, just for demonstration purposes, of course, I can export here and re-import. But if I want to send this, for example, to 3ds Max, I'll just go to Ornatrix 3ds Max 2026 under the same Ephere root directory. And here I'm going to go to grooms and I'm going to save this as medium hair groom. So OXZ format, save. It's going to save a thumbnail. Okay. So now that we have saved this into 3ds Max's grooms directory, let's open 3ds Max. Okay, so in 3ds Max, I'm gonna fetch the scene that I have pre-prepared, which also contains like a character bust. And I've also pre-created and pre-fitted a Graft Groom on it, just so we don't have to redo this tutorial. And in this Graft Groom, and I just realized that because we already have a medium hair Graft Groom that exists with the installation, it was a really bad idea to call this one medium hair as well. So let's just rename it to something else like Chalamet, right? Because we did the tutorial on Timothee Chalamet. So I'll press refresh here. And then we have this Chalamet. You see it even comes with a nice like thumbnail icon here. I'm going to select this groom. So as you see that we have brought the groom from Ornatrix App into 3ds Max. And if we scroll down here to the parameters section, you can see that we have conserved all of our parameters. And if you adjust this, the procedural behavior of your groom has been completely preserved, right? And this is this kind of procedurality at this point is really useful because, for example, what you can do is if you have an army of characters, like a crowd, you can randomize some like parameters for each one. In fact, if you add a random seed, here, if I go back to Ornatrix application, I forgot to show one parameter. It's called random seed. It's at the top here for all operators. And it's another one of those values you probably want to have in each groom. And what it does is it changes the random seeds of every single operator inside the groom that has a random seed parameter. So this means that each new value here is going to produce a completely random groom, starting from curls to shapes of like the texture maps and everything else that's random, right? So this is really useful for randomizing things between characters. And I'm going to hop back inside 3ds Max. And one last thing that I wanted to show is that at the moment we have this aux groom single modifier here, which really restricts an artist to just use this groom using these parameters, which is, I think, personally, it's a great tool. It's really useful to remove choice, especially once something has been approved by a director, right, or something has been signed off. But what you can do, use this Unbox Groom button over here. If I use this Unbox Groom button, what it's going to do is it's going to take all of those operators inside that we did, and it's going to bring them as modifiers inside 3ds Max, essentially recreating the whole groom inside 3ds Max. Right, so everything down to the maps, right? Because we use the maps for clumping, creates a special texture map that it saves on a hard drive. You see right here, this one. Let me just open the material editor. And if I drag this one here, make it an instance, you can see that the noise map that was generated by Ornatrix is actually rasterized. So even like the texture maps that are used are preserved when you unbox this groom. Right, so here you can continue working with it as a normal artist. You can rebox it, you can export it as a Graft Groom from 3ds Max as well. And the same things you can do with Maya, Cinema 4D, and Unreal Engine. I think this demonstrates this feature of Ornatrix, and next time we'll probably create a new groom. See you soon.